this session, I'm going to look at display configurations in solid edge assemblies, which are used to manage assembly component display, which will enhance the interactive performance within solid edge. So as assemblies get larger and larger, it becomes more and more difficult to manage the amount of display that is required, plus also the number of faces or whatever that you're having to manage when you're trying to place components and stuff. So if we look at the display configurations, this is the area that we're looking at, and we have a number of saved ones in this assembly. So we've sort of broken it down into sort of subsets of the sort of specific areas that you may want to look at. So for example, we can look at just the casters and wheels, or we could just look at the frame only, and you can see that it jumps around and sort of gives you a number of different aspects or views. So for example, if we wanted to just work on the hydraulics, we wouldn't want to see all the external parts, so you can sort of move in and access the areas that you're interested in. So basically what you're doing is you're going in and selecting the components that you want to show and hide, and once you've got to that stage, you can then decide that you want to save that for later use. Now, one thing that does happen is that when you add in extra components, they will not automatically be added into the display configuration because you may not want it there. So there is a tool within here, which is the configuration manager, and if we go into here and click on the next component that has been added, you can see that we've got a component here. It's this one sitting in highlighted in the area down here. So we can then go through and decide which ones we want it to be placed into. So we can untick that, which is our reference to it being a new component, and then we can say we want it sitting in on let me see, that one there as well. So when we save that out, we can come back in, and then when we change our configuration, you'll see that that now sits in here automatically. One of the other things that you can do is you can come in here and get a list of display configurations, and you can create a new one. So if you wanted to create a new one, we maybe say you want to look at just the handle, so we can sort of just do a fence selection on that. As you can see, I've probably got a little bit more than I was hoping for. So if I can just hold the space bar, you can see that we can add or remove, and if I just click over those pieces there, I can remove them from my selection and then change it back to add, and I'll add in these two brackets as well. So then if we go show only, we can sort of see that this is now sort of where we want it to be. I've obviously missed out a piece on here, so if I pick up on there and go scroll to, that will take me through to where that part is, and you can see there's one on the other side as well, which we'll add in as well. So from here, if we go into our display configurations, we can go new, and we'll call this handle only, and then that gets added into our list of display configurations. And when I close that down, you'll see that that now becomes part of the drop down. So we could then sort of just go back to everything, and as you can see, you've got multiple configurations. You can sort of mix and match, so you could say select two different ones, so rather than all, we could go with hydraulics and no covers, and that sort of drops in all those components that we've requested there. So you can break it down into manageable sizes and sort of work quite nicely with it that way. So now if I take this a step further, I've got a battery pack that needs to sort of fit in here. To start off with, I could just choose a configuration that is sort of a little bit less heavy. I've got the battery pack open over here. The outer casing here is what's going to be the main part of that positioning. So if I just do a show only on here, and then I can create a new configuration and call this the case. And if we save that now and then go back to our main assembly, if we go to our parts library, and if you right mouse click in here, you can turn on the assembly use configurations and open as settings just by right mouse clicking in the white area. So then when we drag that in to the assembly, we get the options here of what settings we want to use. So I've got this new display configuration for the sub-assembly, and as you can see, all we're getting is just the base part that we want to work with. So immediately we've cut down the amount of faces that we want to work with. So we can just do a mate on here, and then we'll take the front edge and we'll position that against the back edge of here. And then for the final relationship, I'm going to do a center plane, and I've got this set to double, and double on the target, and that sort of drops that in like so. So now I can go back to my all, and it's telling me that some of those are no longer associated with that display configuration. So now if I pick up on this one and go to my display configurations, you'll see that we have our two settings here based on what we had before. So just realized that the default setting is not actually a full display configuration, it's just whatever it was last set as. So if we come in here and we go show all, and then we can add that as a new setting, and again if we save that and come back to our main assembly, we should see that reflected in here, and you'll see that the whole thing is now sort of nicely positioned. So rather than having to worry about the interference of all these parts when we're trying to place it, it becomes a nice simple situation. And obviously we would now need to sort of go back and reassign that added parts using the configuration manager, and we can just go back to the next one and add it into whichever settings we want it to be. So that now fits in nicely. There's also a configuration options. So from here you can turn on whether you want it to fit the actual view when you've changed it. So as you've seen, it's been zooming in and zooming out as I change the display configuration. If you don't want that to happen, you can turn this option off, and yeah, you can sort of specify whether you want all the parts to be simplified or as designed, and so on. So that's a further option available to you there. One of the other advantages of display configurations, if we go into open, for example, and we pick up on here, you'll see that we have a number of options in here on which configuration you want to display when you open the assembly. So if you've got a very large assembly that's going to take a while to load, you can start with a subset of an area that you wish to work in and just open that so that the load time is not as long. One of the other advantages of a display configuration, if you've ever done exploded views, you will save that before you exit the ERA environment, and save the exploded view display for later use. And any display configuration can be used in the draft environment to display the parts that you have selected. So that's just one final area. So hopefully you've learned a little bit about display configurations from this